Who plays an instrument? Perfect. Awesome. Good deal. It's cool to get a read of the room. It's great to be amongst my tribe. I am a musician myself, and I spend a lot of time around people who are doing really, really great work, with their startups or in venture capital. But I probably can't jam with most of those folks. So maybe one day when all this is done, I'll fly out to LA and we can all get a jam session going. I actually have some background sort of connections with Northridge. I went through a program called Curb Creative Connection. I know you guys are familiar with Mike Curb. Through his philanthropy and the Curb Family Foundation a few years ago, they ran a program where they sought to connect all of the Curb schools. So Fisk University here in Nashville, which is where I'm a alum of, was actually partially funded some programs by the Curb Family Foundation and Mike Curb and Curb Records. Belmont University has a Curb school. And so they flew out, I think there were 14 schools at the time that they were working with, and Northridge was one of them. They flew out students from Northridge here to Nashville to hang out for a weekend and get to know each other and learn more about what was happening on the individual campuses as it relates to music business studies. So it's a really cool full circle moment for me to be able to connect with students at Northridge again. And hopefully, I'm sort of jealous that Hadiyah is in LA right now. Hopefully I'll get to make a trip back out there soon. I was planning on making one this spring, and unfortunately, as things have turned out, that's been delayed. My journey has been non-linear and a little bit different. I graduated high school in '09, having always been really involved in music. I was in several bands in high school, managed a couple artists in high school, did things like run our Battle of the Bands, and was involved in all sorts of different band classes, which I imagine a lot of folks in this class probably have similar stories. Went to Middle Tennessee State University, which is a large public university here in Tennessee, and was undeclared. And to be honest, hopefully you all are doing better with your studies than I was at the time. I spent a lot more time in my room making tracks than going to class. But in a lot of ways, that sort of worked out for me in the end. Like I said, spent a ton of time just working on tracks. I was in a group at the time. I'm a singer, songwriter, producer, rapper, and the group I was in at the time was a hip hop group, and we were, sort of, as they say, taking the campus by storm and doing a lot of shows at the time. And I ended up sort of taking a step away from school, and through that process, got to spend a lot more time working with music, really perfecting and honing our craft as a group, and had some really, really awesome experiences with that, and some experiences that taught me some really important lessons and led me on the path that I'm on now. MTSU was great. Anybody familiar with Isaiah Rashad? Okay. Winston. Isaiah Rashad he's a rapper. He signed to the same label as Kendrick Lamar, TDE, Top Dog Entertainment. Isaiah Rashad was at MTSU at the same time, along with a lot of other really, really talented individuals who are in the industry now, like my good friend, Paris PJ Jones, who's written for a ton of folks, whether it be from Usher, Wiz Khalifa, Fantasia, Mary J. Blige. She's currently signed to Atlantic and working as a songwriter through BMG. A ton of just tremendous great talent I got exposed to, and it was a great place to sort of, as they say, iron sharpens iron and get your iron sharpened. I imagine that Northridge is a lot like that. But through those connections and those people and that opportunity, I found myself doing this really, really awesome band, that was making moves in terms of just, being able to garner just attention around town and start to get those sort of early looks that, all artists are looking for. We ended up deciding to work with a artist development guy who had discovered two really, really big bands. I'll name drop just to sort of, so you guys can hear my dilemma here. One of the bands was Paramore, if anybody's familiar with that group. Show of hands, or no, I see some heads nodding. And the other was a group called Cage the Elephant. And so just, Roberto, I'm sorry, man. Off the strength of, this guy having discovered those two bands, it really seemed like a really awesome opportunity. And this long story short there, learning from that is, everything that glitters isn't gold, and especially in the music industry, you got to know the business. And so I think it's really, really awesome that you guys are on the path that you're on, because you're learning the business at such a high level. And whether you are an artist or you're going to support artists, every artist needs someone in their corner who knows the business and is using it on their behalf, because there are people on the other side of the table who, for better or, no matter what their intentions are, don't always have the artist's best intentions at heart. And so it's in this situation, and I think in this room, you guys will probably understand this. So this is my artist development guy, so not the label, not even my manager. And it came times after a year of working with this guy to talk about a deal and what our agreement was going to be. And I knew this guy's, sort of motto. It was develop the artist, get them signed. Would any of you give 50% of your publishing to your development guy? All right, I'm seeing some head shaking now. It sounds like a bad deal. Well, at the time, I knew it was a bad deal, but only because I had heard another artist talking about how he got in this crappy deal with his manager where he had to give up 50% of his publishing. And that was all I knew, was that somebody else had said it was a bad idea. And so I ended up stepping away from that situation and realized, all right, you've got to learn the business. You've got to really dig into, what's going to end up in contracts and get a better understanding of the music industry as a whole, because it's not just playing music. It's a business, as I'm sure you all totally get. I got to Fisk University and studying the music in the music business program there, which was really, really awesome. With it being a really small school, I think you said CSUN is 40,000, Professor Vigneron? Yeah, so the school I went to was at the time 800 students. So a little bit different there. That afforded me this opportunity to really get to know a lot of different types of people. And I got really close to the folks who were working in the computer science department. I'd always been interested in just like tech and entrepreneurship. My dad's an entrepreneur, and getting to be exposed to those people who were working on these really, really cool tools and software and products, people who were doing summer internships at Google and Microsoft and Yahoo and all these really cool companies that I always heard about. It was really, really interesting to me. I knew I wasn't going to be a coder or a programmer, but was definitely interested in learning more. I signed up for this immersion program that I thought was really a music thing with Spotify. And it was like a 2-day immersion thing. You fly out to New York. Some of you have probably done some of these things. I get there and they're like, yeah, no, this thing is totally about getting you as a minority involved in the tech industry because there's a representation problem, which was fine. I thought I was going to go there and like meet a whole bunch of music execs. I met a few music execs and mostly some tech execs. One of those people happened to be Troy Carter, and that's where this will sort of come full circle. Troy Carter was the manager for Lady Gaga from like the beginning of her career all the way through, I think, either Art Pop or the album before Art Pop. He also was manager for Eve. He had gotten his start working under Will Smith, like back in the day, like right after I think Fresh Prince went off the air. So he's like storied guy in the music industry. And so at the time, he was an early investor in Spotify, as well as companies like Uber and Lyft, Warby Parker. And Spotify had just brought him on to be their head of creator relations for the entire globe. And so he was there speaking to the group. And unfortunately, they didn't put me in his session. They assigned sessions. They didn't put me in his sessions. Guys, don't do what I'm about to tell you I did. I ran into him on the elevator. I was supposed to be in a session. I wasn't. I was wandering around. And then after, I figured out, like, you know, every company has their sort of like the way they set up their emails, like first name at or first name dot last name at. I emailed him at the time, it was Troy at Spotify.com. Hey, Troy, really enjoyed meeting you at your session that I didn't get to attend. Would love to stay in touch. And I ended up telling him about my friend PJ, who I told you guys about earlier. At the time, she was still really sort of getting her start. And they just put out her first album under Atlantic. And so we chatted back and forth about PJ, and this is like, yo, this is Troy Carter. This is the guy. He's emailing me back and forth, talking to me about, you know, music and everything. It was just really cool. Fast forward, I applied for the HBC VC program. Hadiyah, for some reason, lets me in the program. And during our sort of first few weeks, I think you were doing assignments for which venture firms that we'd be working at. And she ended up assigning me and a really wonderful student from FAMU to work at what at the time was called Cross Culture Ventures. Cross Culture Ventures is a venture firm that was co-founded by Troy Carter. So it was this really super cool full circle moment where music sort of led me into tech. It led me into venture capital, and I had this opportunity, thank you to Hadiyah, to work in a place and space and with people who understood the music industry. And it was just comfortable, like I talked about being around your tribe earlier. So I had a really awesome experience at Cross Culture, which is now Mac Capital, which Hadiyah mentioned earlier. You know, like I said, Troy had invested in a ton of really awesome companies that, you know, have now become unicorns. Many have exited, like I said, Spotify, Uber, Lyft. At the time, the fund, I think, was somewhere around a $15 or $30 million fund. And Marlon Nichols, who is, you know, just a really awesome guy for one, but also super knowledgeable about venture, was willing to take me as an undergrad who really knew nothing about the space and was coming into it pretty much cold under his wing, and, you know, take the time and have the patience to really teach and expose venture capital and tech and what it could look like to be a cultural investor. And that's the thing I really loved about their thesis, right? Music is culture, right? Entertainment is culture. It's a reflection of culture. It's how we tell stories about who we are. And Cross Culture had this thesis around how really tech is culture, and tech is becoming that new sort of expression of who we are. And that's not just the social media apps, it's really everything. And how can tech not only be a reflection of culture, but also address culture, address what we're doing from, you know, in our day-to-day lives, whether that's some big enterprise SaaS software that really is some sort of straight particular business application. How does the way that's set up, whether it's like a Slack, if anybody's used Slack, how does that reflect how we communicate now, and how we as people going into the workplace want to be able to communicate with our coworkers. So just really awesome. And I think what was really cool is being around a group of minorities who were really at the top of their game. And, you know, Marlon has gotten a really awesome sort of high profile in the venture capital industry these days, and rightly so. And so it's just really cool to be around people like Marlon, the Low Tonys of the world, Charles Hudson, Susie Rue, who was at Cross Culture and is now doing a startup with Troy. who could show you that people from any background can succeed in tech. There isn't a pipeline issue. It's an inclusion issue. And so just being around people who had found their ways and were looking for opportunities to offer pathways to others was just really, really awesome. Back to Hadiyah.
No, I mean, at this point, I don't know if we want to just leave time for Q&A. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. I know I didn't really dive into there might be some questions around what is venture capital.
What is venture capital?
Yeah. You should go ahead. Yes, explain what you do now, maybe with that.
Yeah, sure. So I work at Launch Tennessee. We're public-private partnership investing and supporting startups here in the state of Tennessee. So who has Instagram? All right, that has nothing to do with venture capital. Follow me at Khrys Hatch. I'm just kidding. So Instagram, is it's a tech startup, right? And essentially, you wouldn't really call it a startup anymore, but at some point, Instagram was a startup, and that startup needed funding, right? And the life cycle for most venture-backed startups, so whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Slack or Google back in the day or Amazon back in the day, it's somewhere along the lines of you bootstrap. So you as an entrepreneur put up your savings. You hopefully don't max out credit cards, but people do that as well. You use your salary from work to put, little by little, put money into your startup. And then someday you go full time and you hopefully are able, if you're fortunate enough to have friends and family who can put money into your startup, and you start asking your friends and family, hey, can you put $1,000, $5,000, $10,000? Rich uncle, can you put $50,000 into my startup? After that is usually when you start seeking investment from angels. And the goal along this whole pathway, right, is so that you can scale your startup, because it takes money to grow a business, right? And Hadiyah, we talk about, especially within the HBCU VC circle, right? People having great ideas, but not having the access to capital to be able to fund those ideas and grow them. If you want to hire a team, if you want to get the first iteration of your product, what we call the minimum viable product, developed and out to the market, if you want to be able to market that and buy ads for it, or whatever your marketing strategy is, all of that takes capital. And so you're taking these steps along the way and bringing these people into your circle and bringing them into your company by selling them portions of your company, right? So you're selling little equities, the 100%, there's a piece of the pie, and you're saying, here's a piece of the pie for your $5,000. Here's another piece of the pie for your $50,000, whatever the case may be. And you're doing that so that you can be able to fund your startup, grow your baby into the next big thing. So you go bootstrap, friends and family, angel, which are people like the Troy Carters of the world, who at the time might not necessarily have a fund, but are investing out of their own wealth and supporting startups and building their own startup portfolio. And then you get to venture capital. Usually after venture capital, that's when you head in PE, or you might exit or IPO, whatever the case may be, acquisitions. And so venture capital is this sort of spot along that spectrum where you probably, depending on the kind of venture capitalist that you're talking to, you probably got some traction, although that's not always the case. There's tons of stories where Hadiyah lives in Silicon Valley of people writing an idea on a napkin and getting a pretty hefty check. But in a lot of cases, especially where I am in the Southeast, you got a little bit of traction. You can show that there's a fit for what you're doing in the market. And so VC firms who raise money from private investors, right? So whether that be, wealthy individuals, high net worth individuals, or pensions or foundations, or sort of what we call limited partners, which are organizations that basically invest money on behalf of other organizations or people. As venture capitalists, we invest those funds into these companies. We're basically saying, I think that this company is going to be the next Uber. I think it's going to be, or I think it's going to be the next Lyft. I think it's going to be the next Google. I think it's going to be the next big thing. I think it's going to generate an outsized return that I can then, one, take that return back to my investors as a venture capitalist and say, here, I've taken your $100,000 that you invested in our fund and turned that into $300,000. I've turned it into $500,000. Hopefully I've turned it into millions. And also I'm going to take a chunk of that, which is called my carry, while I've also been taking a little chunk of that, which is my management fee along the way. Venture capital is really important for the tech industry just because, you know, a lot of early companies, and really I'd love to see some version of this model. And there are versions of this when you look at organizations like NDVC. Most startups, most companies in their first year don't have the traction to be able to go get a bank loan. If you're a college student, if you're, chances are if you're a minority or, you know, whatever the case may be, you don't have the track record with a bank for them to even consider you for that bank loan. So venture capital really ends up being that bridge and that alternative form of capital for these really, you know, scalable, high growth businesses to be able to scale at the speed that they need to without having to jump through the hoops. And it's a riskier investment, which is why it's sort of this wild, wild west of investment. And a lot of people want to get into it because it's such an interesting and risky asset class. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that was a lot, so sorry. Yeah. Any questions about that, or?
I'd say it'd be helpful to take questions to see where everyone's at.
What was the risky asset class you said just now?
Venture capital is a risky asset class.
Yeah.
So like compared to say, like your 401k or a mutual fund or, you know, even in most cases, and this probably now is the best time to say this, like the stock market, most people would still probably rather put their money in the stock market than venture capital. And it's one of the reasons to even participate in this side of the industry. You know, the SEC has certain regulations and rules around who can be a limited partner in a venture capital firm. Because you're really essentially like, it's me taking Hadiyah's, you know, $500,000 and giving you, Crystal, $100,000 and saying, hey, go build your startup. Hope it works out. If it doesn't work out, guess what, Crystal? Unless you've written that into our agreement, you probably don't have to pay me back, which means I don't have to pay Hadiyah back. And so whether you win or whether you lose, the outcomes are really out of her hands, and she has to be comfortable with that.
And I'm going to add on to that, because even though like a lot of those terms aren't legally binding, venture capital is one of those industries which is extremely trust and relationship based. Mm-hmm. So if I don't get my $100,000 back from Khrys, then I don't work with him again. And essentially, I also tell others that. And so Khrys is essentially out of a job. So he may have like a one-time gig as a VC. So those are some of the like nuances around venture capital as an industry. So extremely high risk, which is why there's a high trust and relationship component of it, which is honestly one of the reasons when we look at the lack of representation in the industry of who gets to say of who gets the money is one of the reasons why we exist as an org to make sure that there are more people that are reflective of the population have a say of who gets the money.
If my company fails, does Khrys need to make a best ditch effort to try and get you the money back some other way to keep that relationship?
Yeah. So that's what happens. So majority of venture capital funds do not return returns. They don't return returns, right? And so essentially what would happen is if he looks at your business and say, hey, things haven't been working out, before you tank all this money, let me at least try to get, like, maybe I can't get Hadiyah 5 times her money, but can I at least get her back the money she got? So let's try and sell your company at this type of amount so we can walk away break even. So so this is where sometimes you hear a lot of stories coming out of investments about disputes between founders and VCs and overthrowing a CEO, and it's really sometimes because their goals or their motivation may become misaligned, right? Where a founder may say, hey, I'm gonna keep going because I believe in it and I believe in it. And the investor's like, I still gotta get this person back their money. It's time to call it quits. And so that's just a little bit of the insight.
Could you explain how you see angel investors versus VC?
Yeah.
So that way students see the difference.
Yeah. So traditionally, and I say that because now you're starting to see, well, we'll see what happens after this new, we're now going into a new norm of everything, but the traditional industry was that an angel investor was someone who invested out of their own money, right? So, and it usually wasn't their daytime job. It was, hey, my nephew over there is starting a company, and I want to be the first person to support him, so I give him money. Or I hear about someone else who's starting a company, and I'll give them money. But I'm not technically a professional investor. I will just invest out of my own money. A venture capitalist is a professional who has a fiduciary responsibility. So they have a fund that they are collectively managing. So they may say, hey, I have some insights into this industry, and I can see it growing. And so they will go to high net worth individuals. Sometimes they go to institutions like foundations or pension funds. California has like the largest pension fund. They manage the largest pension fund of state employees. And so a lot of that pension fund actually goes into venture capital. So they find venture capital investors to invest that money. And so if I'm a professional venture capital, I might get my money from the state pension fund. I may get my money from high net worth individuals, anyone who has like a pot of money that they're managing. So like universities have endowments that they manage. Part of that endowment is usually going into a venture capital fund to get returns. So I may raise money from Northridge for my venture fund. And now because I've raised money from all these people, and I'm a professional investor, I have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure I do what's right and make decisions so that I get the best returns for these investors. So there's a slight difference there. I hope that cleared it up.
Yes. So it's oftentimes I also see it. It's like in the scale of scaling the company. It's the angels tends to be earlier than the VC, and the VC tends to have a specialty within the VC. There's VC that are more in tech and VC that are more in biotechnology, and there's some VC that are more into industry, manufacturing. So what's your specialty in your VC? Do you have any?
Yeah, so go ahead, Khrys. That's a question for you.
Oh, sure. So we're actually, our fund is agnostic. I personally have like certain things that I'm interested in, you know, whether it be like IoT or other sort of solutions that I think are really interesting, but our fund is agnostic. I'm really interested in learning just a little bit more about what the music tech investment landscape looks like. I'm meeting a lot more actual like music tech investors, like funds that are building around theses around music tech. There's one in New York called +8. That's really interesting. It's worth you guys looking up if you, +8 equity. I'll put that in the chat.
Okay.
But yeah, and then Hadiyah, you want to talk about HBCVC? What's our focus?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so we're not a fund. We are we're an organization that is designed to get underrepresented into venture capital. So we support and work with other funds. We also support, like I said, we support Los Angeles, where I'm at now, with Annenberg Foundation and Pledge LA and the mayor's office to make sure that the venture capital industry here in Los Angeles is growing, but they're growing and representing the people here in Los Angeles.
Oh, that's good.
I have a
I
question.
did want to circle back really quick, just to make a quick comparison. The venture capital industry to me is a lot like the music industry. I don't know if anybody ever heard that like the top, 10% of artists pay for the rest of the artists to be on the label. Somebody ever heard that? Like the reason that all the other artists on Columbia can be on Columbia is because Beyonce and Adele are on Columbia. Venture capital is a lot like that, right? The reason that every venture capitalist is even having a conversation with, the founders that they're talking to is because they're hoping that one of those founders is going to be the next Lyft or the next Slack or whatever the case may be, right? So I think there's a very much a comparison there that I think you guys would appreciate.
I was going to ask a question. Well, first, thank you for doing this for us. I'm
glad to hang out, Cyrus.
So, because it's in the best interest of the VC and then the startups, I imagine that the VC at some level, they participate in management of the development of these companies, right? How involved are they? Or because I imagine it's not like, here's the money, come back a month later, show me how you're doing. And what resources do they put out for the startup companies that they can benefit from?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And it looks a bit different. Hadiyah, I would love, your perspective on that too. It looks a bit different funds. Some are really hands-on. A lot of VCs try and build a thesis around their prior experience and knowledge. So like Professor Vigneron, like if he was to start his fund tomorrow, he might say my expertise is in marketing. So I'm going to focus on MarTech, and I'm going to, my particular thing that I will bring to the startups is how to sell this particular technology into large enterprises, right? Say in the healthcare space, right? So to even go like even deeper. You have VCs that check in with their founders every week. You have some that like, it is more of a, reach out when you need something sort of thing. But there's a lot of different ways to do it. As you get further along, and really I think at any stage, good CEOs will look for VCs that are involved, that are interested in providing support, because you want the extension of network, you want the extension of expertise. And to me, just in my opinion, I just don't know. There's a lot of talk right now about how VCs differentiate themselves because there's so much money flowing into the market. And so you have to be willing to offer something other than a check.
Right.
So
So
a lot of incubators we get.
Yeah. Yeah. Incubators is one. But to answer your question in terms of like, when taking VC money, there is always this concept of economics, control, and power. Because you're essentially selling a portion of your company, so this person has ownership in it. However, most VCs are not in the VC industry business to run your business, right? They don't want to run your business. They don't want to, they want to run their VC firm, not your business. However, if they feel as though it starts infringing on certain points, they then will kind of, and then there's another important note. A lot of VCs, it's very common for a lot of VCs to take a board seat, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's where that power comes in. When you look at the overthrow of Uber, the Uber CEO, a couple years ago, It's because, you know, all the money, all the investors, the majority investors sat on the board. And so because they were the board of directors, they had the option to like fire Travis. And that's what they did behind the doors. So there is this power, depending on how much money you take, of, you know, through a board seat, through how much shares you own in that company. But yeah, most VCs are not, they don't want to run your business. If you can go off and come back only, you know, producing updates and leverage their network when they can, you know, that's probably like the best relationship. And most of them are willing, or they do see it as part of their job, especially if you are in a jam or a hot spot. They do want to support as much as possible because they're invested in you. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
And that's why I was talking about incubators, because you have incubators that are more dormant, and you have incubators that are accelerators who are much more involved. And so CSUN is trying to go into this VC. They've partnered with LACI, LACI, you know.
Which is another organization that we work with Pledge LA. So, yeah.
So, and now CSUN is trying to go alone and build their own structure. But, you know, it's not that easy, because it doesn't go against their motivation, but it sort of requires different skill sets. So it takes a while to find all the different people that can run this accelerator. So we have the buildings, so that's really good. We have some experts, and we have some famous people that come out and have high net worth that want to reinvest in the university. So the idea is, instead of just making donation to the university, you make donation to the VC inside the university. So you're helping us, helping someone else. And at the same time, you can actually benefit, because if this becomes successful, then somehow it's good philanthropy, because the money can come back to you. So they're trying to do this, but it's a human resource issue. And also, you know, it's, you know, done by the university. So the university has to be going through all the loops of a state-owned institution. So they're trying. It's moving along. And that's actually how I found this connection as well, through someone who's in charge of this process, through the school, through the university. Very good. Mm. So is there like could you tell us something about what do you think are the 2 or 3 criteria that a VC person will look at when they are evaluating a company?
You want me to go, Khrys, or you want to talk about your criteria? And
yeah,
also, I want to be very.
Go for it.
I also want to be very careful, because venture capital, it really does run like a family business. It is it's a very small, and so the way that venture capitalists move and operate in Silicon Valley is very different from the way venture capitalists move and operate in LA, and very different from how they operate in the South or on the East Coast. You know, when you would say that Silicon Valley is very liberal with their money, where you do have those stories of people like, this is a great idea, you know, here's my napkin figure, and thank you for my $1 million. And so you do have some of those stories where in the South and in the, you know, on the East Coast, you know, you're probably not getting an investment of $1 million until your company has had a certain set of recurring revenue, certain set of users. Like, if the thing has to be built out and demonstrated, so you're probably bootstrapping for a lot longer, on like in other locations outside of the California regions. So depending on, and then I should also state that there's a spectrum of venture capital investing. So there is, in the life cycle of a company, your very, very early stage, typically outside of some people may say it's a family and friends round where there's angel investors. And I'm putting this in quotes because there are a lot of people who can't do a friends and families round. I don't have an uncle that I can reach out to who's going to give me my first $100,000. So there are some VCs who are starting to step in this area.
Yes.
And those VCs who are stepping in this area, which would traditionally be an angel round or friends and family round, they are called pre-seed. And the things that they are looking for really has to do about the person and the qualities of that person, because your company is so early that there's no traction that they can base it on. So they look at that person's individual track record. What are other things that you've done in your life that showed me that you could be successful, that showed me that you can execute? As the company grows, and like, again, there's rounds of financing where you go from pre-seed to seed to Series A to Series B, and it's a lot of rounds. And the ideal payoff is that your company becomes a public company, is traded on the stock market, and it has an IPO, right? Later stage companies, Series B, Series C, your company has been around a lot longer. So there's a lot of data points that that the investors can look at your company and say, is this a fit for the portfolio? Do we see this trend forecasting to continue growth? So what a VC looks at is different by VC, different by location, and definitely different by stage of the company.
Very good, yeah. Yeah, so data points, looking at the data points versus looking at the individual. And that's one thing that I always tell students is it's people makes a difference. And so you have to see who you partner with. Skills is number two, is oftentimes people. You can teach skills, but you can't teach someone to be a nice person. And so if this person is not nice, it's better not to work with that person, even though they're skilled.
Yeah. No, and every VC is different, but this is something where, I'm going to be involved in the insides of your company for a very long time, right?
Yeah.
So, and a VC thinks about this, like, in evaluating how we're going to work together. Like, is this going to be a problem entrepreneur? So is this a person that I really do want to have a phone call with every other week and see what's going on? And so VCs have turned away from deals just because maybe the entrepreneur may be someone who is not someone that they want to work with, someone that, and so they look at those, they look at personal characteristics, and that can bring in a lot. Like I said, that can be a lot of issues. Just like I said, right now, the venture capital industry is an all white industry, right? And so if this is the first time they've had to work close with a Black entrepreneur and they've never had a relationship with a Black person before, it may be hard for them to see, what does this look like? For me, like, can we really get through the tough times together? And so some VCs may actually opt out of that and say, well, I've never really done this before, so I'm just going to opt out of funding this entrepreneur. So it's still nuance. I
have one question, is because I think it's going to interest everyone, is how do you feel about entrepreneurs who are 100% committed in their enterprise versus the other one who have a side job? And as an investor, which one do you prefer? Do you prefer to invest in the one that is 100% committed to this job, but then they rely on so much that if it doesn't work, they may give up faster because that's all they have? Or do you rather invest in someone who has another job, so they have some revenue, but on the other hand, they are not 100% of the time committed to this company that you are investing on? How do you feel about this? What's your experience?
From my experience, again, it differs by investor. Majority of the investors that I know will not look at an entrepreneur who is probably working full-time somewhere else and doing the startup nights and weekends. And I've heard this concept before, like, why should I make the investment if they haven't made the investment? And so, you know, there's some problem with that, as not everyone can afford to not work and go full time in their company. I've seen some people like are full time in their company, but maybe, you know, they've done Uber to like pay bills until they get investment. But majority of the investors I know need you to be full time in your business. One, because this is a company that should be growing rapidly, which means that you should be out there talking to all your customers as much as possible, learning and iterating on a daily basis. So launching features on a daily basis. You can't wait till the weekend to launch the next feature. And so that's what I've seen. Most investors, they won't look at an entrepreneur who's not committed full time.
I agree. I just wanted someone else to say it.
Yeah, I'll sort of chime in just with a sort of alternative. I mean, I think it's the why, like why that entrepreneur, and like Hadiyah said, most VCs will not make an investment. I think there are some who would ask the question, okay, well, what have you done with that full-time job? And I'm thinking one of our portcos who, when she first came to us, she was working full-time but had done $100K in revenue that year. So working her full-time job, running a business on the side that's generating $100,000 in annual revenue, that says a lot. Now, granted, her startup was in the industry that she was in, so she was leveraging the contacts that she had from the industry and that she was making on a daily basis. But, you know, I think it comes down to the why and how you sell that story, and why you're still doing that.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Go ahead. Yes.
It was just popping up in my mind earlier. What's a healthy balance of investment from a VC or an angel investor versus like in-home investment, like what you are bringing in?
So the percentage.
It's my question. Should you take all the investment from venture capitalism and be like, okay, so the whole pie has to be split up now among all these investors, and then now my company, it's pretty much not weakened, but like very much tied up to all these avenues, and then will that provoke a slower growth or a less robust company in the long term, and everybody's making money, but it's just squeezing the company and making it die at some point? So what's a healthy level of investment?
So it really depends on you. And most people would say that the money that you're taking should be smart money, right? So you wouldn't see that money, you shouldn't take money that is constraining the company. Like every money that you take and every investor that you should be adding value. So I'm growing the pie. Like my portion is getting smaller, but the pie is growing, then that value is growing, right? And so it's very rare. I mean, how much did Mark own when he went in, when they had IPO? I think he still owned like 20% of the company. And that's considered very rare for someone to go to IPO and one of the founders still owned 20% of the company. So most founders, I don't know, by time they get to like this public exit, you know, maybe they're at probably like 5%. I don't know. It's a wide range depending on, but you know, there's this concept of, you know, you can own 50% of $100,000, or you could own, you know, 5% of $1 billion, right? But these are the decisions that both founders and investors are thinking about. What is this what is this balance between economics and control as your company is growing?
Yeah, it's a challenge because if you have one person that's too much versus multiple people that have small shares, it's the dynamic that makes things interesting. And oftentimes, personally, I feel like I don't know. I had to go through the process to sort of figure it out, which one I liked. And you make mistakes, and then you go, oh, I have too many of this or too little of this, and you make readjustments, and you're rebuying your partners. I mean, that's what I'm going to be doing in the next month, is buying one of my partners, so that way I can regain the freedom. So, and this is the third time I'm doing this. So it happens, and it's part of this world we live in. There's nothing that stays the same, and people change, and you have to adjust. And that's why it's not for everyone, becoming an entrepreneur. Yes, it's not for everyone. So maybe to finish, there's another question.
I think because like you said, you don't know until you try. And so that was like a perfect segue for me of if anyone wanted to was still looking for a paid opportunity for the summer, this is your opportunity, to sample what does it look like to work with a venture capitalist or understand the venture capital industry. And I'll put the link in the chat. Applications close this weekend. So this Sunday at midnight, our applications will close. And you don't have to have any experience in VC. The program is designed specifically for people who don't have experience in VC, very similar to a program that Khrys went through. So sorry, that was my last plug.
Well, that was good. That's what I was going to ask you to do. That's exactly what I was going to ask you to do, Hadiyah, actually, because what I did on Sunday, I sent them a bio. I made a bio for you and for Khrys, so that way they could see who you were before you came. And I also downloaded the application as a PDF, and I mailed everybody the PDF. So they all have the application saved in their hard drive right now. And there's a few students that told me that they are very interested and they are looking for applying before Sunday. And so I think if there's anyone who is interested, maybe you have an opportunity to ask a question if you've looked at the application or something like this, just before we let you go.
I applied today.
Oh, you applied today. Okay, very good.
I did, and I hope I have no typos or misspelled words in my application.
Excellent. Okay, so Crystal, remember her name. Who else is applying that would want to ask a question?
Is it only for minorities? That's what I understood from the application.
We are the program is targeted for those who do not have and minorities is like this word that can be all encompassing. We are asking you, do you feel as though that you would not normally have this advantage, right? And those are the people that we are targeting, right? And so and that you may balance that, if you feel so you're a part of any community that is underrepresented in any way, and so that's how we ask that question.
So because it said like Latino, Native American, Black, and it laid out a few things like that.
Yeah. So again, like we're looking at race, ethnicity. We're looking at sexual orientation, gender identities that are non-conforming. We're looking at
first generation college.
First generation college students. There's so many, and everyone has their own, layer, but it's just something that you would kind of ask yourself, like, based on my identities, I wouldn't normally have access to this opportunity. So majority of venture capitals, like the majority of the industry, got into venture capital because their uncle was the LP, or like they had this like family connection, right?
Yeah.
That's the cycle that we're trying to break.
Well, that's very good. So therefore I can apply a French man with a strong accent living in LA. There's a minority. No, it's great. Well, it's wonderful. Thank you for giving us your time and your precious word of wisdom. I think it was very good. That's exactly what I was hoping. Thank you for sharing your email and your information. Khrys, I just see that you did that. So that's great. I'm sure the students will take this opportunity to keep in touch with you. And it's been wonderful. So I look forward to see you again. I'm sure we'll run into some other situation because this is a small world. And since you like the music industry, the students, now that we've had a number of these cohorts, there's quite a large number of students that end up having high executive positions because there's not too many masters specialized in the music industry. So they will do very well, and some of them will become your colleague, I'm pretty sure. So this is great. We're starting our own tribe here with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. I put my contact information there as well. If you want like immediate response for the application, the info@pledgela.org is probably the best one. My email's flooded right now, but please do reach out to me. I look forward to reading everyone's applications.
Wonderful.
All right. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Be safe.
Apply
Stay
for
safe.
LA.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Very good. This was great. So what I find very interesting is you see that life is like this, is that you have to be very persistent and keep trying to knock at the door, and whatever your big dream is very likely to happen. And I think that was part of the message. He was being very persistent. He was knocking at the door and making sure that he was heard. Let me therefore move on to lecturing. I will flip my screen so that way you can see PowerPoint. Hopefully you can see that. So I would like to maybe take a little break of just 5 minutes if anyone wants to drink or go to the restroom or something like this, and then we can get started, because I will do a lecture, and after the lecture what I would like to do is meet with the team, starting with team 1 for a few minutes, and then team 2, team 3, because I want to see what are your ideas and how you're doing with your project, because you will be presenting on Saturday, and Saturday that would be the time that you will be graded. So I can give you some tips, I suppose. So let's just take a few minutes if you want to eat something or run to the restroom or whatever. I'm gonna just do that myself. So I'll see you in 2-3 minutes, all right?
How's it going, everybody?
Hey, girl.
What's up? What's up?
I love that, like, your background looks so cute. You should shoot, like...
It's lights.
Can you please shoot your graduation video right there? That is so cute.
Yes. And then...
You know I'm waiting for your graduation video, just saying.
But I have...
I think we have till Christmas for that now.
Yeah, low-key, you guys have until, like, next year. But for real, I know you guys have hella time, so if any of you guys could shoot that video, I'll send you the questions. I would love to edit it sooner than later.
I don't have any time.
You don't?
I'm working from home.
You an essential girl? You an essential?
No, kind of. But I'm working from home, and then I'm running a business. I gotta stay on top of my shit, so no free time. What is free time? I don't know what that is.
Hey, side note though, I did want to tell everybody, there's this guy that I have recently worked with. He's like a newer artist, just dropped an album. I'm going to send his album in Facebook. He's looking for management. If anybody wants to hop on it, if they think he has talent, I'll send it your guys' way.
Awesome. That would be great.
Yay.
Also, if you haven't listened already, my artist Ridge Downs dropped his first single last Friday.
Let's
so go check it out. It's
Let's
awesome.
go. Could you drop that in? Could you drop that in the Facebook chat? I'll check that out.
Yeah, and then also new music from Caviar coming later this week, and some other artists in the next couple weeks. So stay tuned, everybody.
You go, Holly. I'm rooting for you, girl.
Woo!
And of course, I always share my artist as well. But Mandy, what do you think about the person that you're planning to send?
I like him. I think he has some talent. I think his talent's a little unpolished. I think he's a little rough around the edges. But I think as far as like lyrics go, I think he has a good sound.
What's his genre?
It's hip hop. I'll send it to you guys, and you guys can check it. I'll send you guys my favorite song, so I don't make you listen to the whole album.
Well, then that how's everybody doing?
Good.
Yeah. I'm good. I'm busy. Work, projects. I have no time, honestly. And I'm working out, finally. It doesn't show yet, but...
What do you mean? You look skinny on the You look skinny from my view right now.
I'm trying my best, honestly.
He's all, I'm working out, eating out.
I got this subscription to, it's called Beachbody on Demand. So you watch these videos with workouts. So I'm watching the videos. I think the next step is
for all of us to do a workout class together on Zoom.
That would be hilarious. I would love that.
I'd be too
I would
busy
love that. I
laughing
can make
to
it a
even
part
do
of the
that.
graduation video.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yes.
That's what you do.
Mandy, you're in too good shape for us to keep up with.
No, I've been eating all the donuts and cookies, guys. I ate all my quarantine snacks in 1 week.
Oh my God, that's bad. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I've been going to the store every other day because I keep eating all the food. That's the only place I get to go these days, to the refrigerator and back.
This is when you say, let's get out the crock pot and make a meal that will last me for 4 days. That's what I did today. I made pulled pork tenderloin with like a bunch of vegetables and stuff. Oh, and it was so good. But now I have food for the next like 3 or 4 days.
On my way.
And you can't invite anyone. That's the problem.
That is the problem, because Professor, you don't know this, but I host the occasional dinner party here, and I can't do that, and I really want to. But when this is all over, we're gonna have a big party, and I will cook all the food. Good
for you. That's great. Yeah, there's so many things that I think of, and I go, okay, that's gonna be in my list for when this is over, and this is in my list, and this is in my list, and this is in my list. Oh,
I'm going dancing. That's what's on my list.
Yeah, it's well, I have friends who are Muslims, and when they're gonna do this pretty soon, is they have this 30 days where they do the fasting, and there's a lot of things they don't do, and the first week they really suffer because they're very cranky and all of that, and then after 2 weeks they feel like they've never felt so good because they don't eat as much and they have very clear views and all of this. And then the last 5 days, then all they think about is when this is over, so they become cranky again, nervous. And I'm thinking of them right now because there's so many restrictions. I'm like, wow, this is kind of a restriction that reminds me of what they have to go through. And yeah, so eating, that's the last thing that we have left. And but I think I have a lot of work. I can't wait to have a little bit more time to do reading. Reading is fun. Anyone that takes the time to read,
yeah,
you get a good book and take time for yourself, and it's a good time to do meditation. So, talking about meditation, let's meditate on this slide. This is this slide is about Tao. I call this the Darwinership. You've seen it in the past. Because I show it to you in the marketing class, but it's really very much a slide that is much more appropriate for entrepreneurship, because that's what was my inspiration when I thought of all of this concept. So what is the overall concept? The overall concept is the idea is that to be in business, you have to survive. And obviously right now it's very clear when you have a business is you have to come up with some new ideas of what you need to do in order to survive those change in your environment and adapt to those changes in your environment to do much better. What is it that you need to do to adapt? The first thing is do research. And the second thing is to believe in leadership. Doing research so that way you can look for problems and you can find solutions, and have leadership in the sense that you don't do research just for the sake of doing research and saying that you've done it. Is you do research because you're really looking for answers to your questions. And once you find the answers, you need to act, you need to be responsible, you need to make decisions. So being, I think a little bit about what we see right now in politics, where we find sometimes that the people that are managing the politics, being from the president or being from high level administrative people, is they are lacking of this leadership. And we're wondering, and this is true in every country, because I follow the news in UK, in Switzerland, in France, in Spain. It's a mess everywhere, pretty much because there's a lack of leadership. So people waited too long to say we need to stop all of this because of the coronavirus, and some people did it earlier, and there's some people that believe in getting more doctors involved, and some people, they don't care so much about the doctors and so forth. I mean, my wife is a doctor, and that was just 5 days ago, they told her not to wear a mask, and they were telling all the doctors not to wear a mask and not to wear gowns and all of this, which was absolutely crazy. So they actually had a strike and so forth. And then eventually they said, no, you all wear a mask. So it's like, how could you be one day not wearing a mask and one day you should be wearing a mask? It was the same virus, and people didn't have the leadership to say, we don't have enough mask. If you're using a mask, use it as best as you can, because there's not other masks. So leadership is very important, because we need good leaders, and good leaders make good entrepreneurs, people that want to take the role of leading. You have to believe in growth. So an entrepreneur is not someone that wants to become a billionaire. There are some, but that's not the main characteristics. An entrepreneur is someone that wants to grow, someone that's looking for betterment, improvement, and they're looking to lead people towards what they think is better, and what they think is better is going to be the innovation. They're looking for reinventing and making things better. They have to have some creativity. They have to have some openness. They have to sell themselves. So when you do research, what do you look for? You look for to collect data that already exists. This is secondary data. You look at collect data that does not exist. This is primary data. The first thing you do is you really do exploratory, which is very much looking at qualitative research. And qualitative research is collecting data in a small scale, not in large quantity, just asking people questions. This semester, I recommend that you do secondary data, like last semester. Do secondary data, you won't do that. And I recommend that you do primary data, but just qualitative, focus groups. Don't go into doing quantitative research, which is descriptive, the second layer, which is to do a survey or collect huge, large number of data. When you're an entrepreneur and you're in a startup and you're just starting, you don't have this luxury of collecting thousands of surveys for hundreds of questions and so forth. This is too time consuming. You need to ask people questions and act on it and show leadership and show conviction. Then the last level of research is called causal research, is when you're making experiments. So it's experimental research where you have a treatment and when you have a control group. And this is more of a scholar academic type of research, or a type of research that a very large company would do. So you rarely do causal research when you're an entrepreneur, but you just know these three exist. So what is it that you're doing? Is you're a leader, you take decisions, you take responsibility, you need to make decisions, but you're under the constraints of your environment. So I want to show you this video very quick, because it's only 1 minute, and because this simple video, it will show you. Oh, I have it ready already. In 1 minute, Marcus Ledemonis, who's very famous on TV because he works on a show which is called The Project or something like this.
Oh yeah, he brings the restaurants back to profit, right?
Yes, he brings restaurants back to profits, but not just restaurants. He does also
just
other
businesses.
businesses. Yeah. And so he's like a mentor, if you want. And he's like again, we're talking about VC. He's not really a VC. He's more of a coach, And in some of this business, he's going to put some of his money maybe afterwards and so forth. But what I liked about the way he looks at it is last week we looked at the characteristics of an entrepreneur, and there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 25. But if I had to boil them down into 2, because 25 is too much, I would say it's someone who is very humble, a good entrepreneur, and is someone who is very curious. And those 2 characteristics, I think, are the 2 that boil down. If you have those 2, you can do a lot. So let's see what he says.
Here are my 5 red flags for why you shouldn't be an entrepreneur. You're more concerned about the money. You're more concerned about the fame. You don't want to put in the time. You care more about yourself than your employees, and the customers aren't number 1. Those particular 5 demonstrate for me a level of humility in being a business owner, and a level of modesty, and a level of self-awareness, and a level of understanding who ultimately drives the business. There is no one captain of the ship. And if there is, that captain better have taken direction, taken advice, learned from, listened to the entire crew. And if they don't, that business owner is going to be going down with the Titanic. And I see it. I've done almost 75 episodes, and it surprises me how people continue to make the same mistakes. Shocks me.
So I very much believe in what he said, even though this is sort of a reality TV show. I think it is very important to realize that to be a good entrepreneur is you have to have this humility, you have to really care for the customer, and you have this curiosity to listen to everyone and constantly come up with innovation. So this is sort of summarizing what we discussed last week. Again, I continue is you don't just do it for the customers, you also do it against the competitors. So I'm working on another project with a group of students right now, and one of the students is really smart, and he came to me and he said, "Professor, I found what we should do is I found that we should do X because none of the competitors are doing it." And then I told him, "You don't do something because there's nobody doing it. You create a new product because there's a need for the consumers. You don't do something because no competitors are doing it." So this project is for a company that sells decoration, and the type of decoration are either small or medium. And he found that there's no large decoration being made. And because there's no large decoration being made by the competitors, we should be making large decoration. But then I told him, "Do the consumer want large decoration?" And then he said, "Oh, I don't know about this." So you make large decoration because the consumer wants large decoration. And then you find that there's no competitors making large decoration. Great. That's a really good opportunity because then you could be doing it. Do you have the resources? No. Is there a way we can find the resources to do it? If we don't have it, and if we have the resources, that's even better. That's the process. It's a very simple SWOT analysis type of mentality, which is driven by the opportunity and your strengths and weaknesses, and then the competitors. You're looking for opportunities. Where you find them? You find them mostly in your micro environment from the consumers. The consumers need to be your main focus. Your employees need to be your main focus. But at the same time, now we live in a world that it's not possible to conceptualize the fact that only the micro environment is important. Obviously, the macro environment is very important, and right now we are all subjected to the macro environment. I mean, if you look at all the red circles section, that's where we are. We are split up because of the natural change, the political change, the demographic change, and so forth. So when you're an entrepreneur, you really care for the SWOT analysis. If you need to remember one thing from this class is know how to make good SWOT analysis and know how to make good pitch about your ideas. Good pitch are made based on you being able to talk about the just noticeable difference. What is it that you're doing that is different and how much different it is and who would care and what makes it better. And then when you think about that, you have to think about this fact that people go through a list of stages, from the fact that they may not know about this product, they may not care, they may not see the value. So you have to communicate the value to them. Then they see the value and then they go into this need. I do need it. You know, I mean, it happened to me today. I was sort of, I had a little bit of an upset stomach, and I was thinking, maybe I have an upset stomach because I don't eat good stuff. And then I looked at some YouTube video, and then there was a YouTube video of before it started where someone said, I have this super amazing energy probiotic pill that if you take it, you're going to change your life. You're not going to have stomach pain. You're going to start getting slim and you're going to start being younger and all that. There was this magic pill. And this magic pill was actually just saying everything that I needed at that time. They were using the right words. And obviously that worked very well for me because the YouTube gave them some information about me based on the video that I was looking at, based probably on my age and my hobby and my social class or whatever. So that video had all the information that was perfectly connected to the person that I am. So it was well targeted. At the end of the day, this was actually pretty good because I actually bought the pill. I'm going to try it. Who cares? Let's see if it works. It looked pretty legitimate. So suddenly I had a need recognition. Man, I got to have this pill. So I told my wife, who's a doctor, and she said, oh, that's a ripoff. And then she looked at me and she says, okay, I can tell. Do you want them? Go get them. So let's see. Information searches, I actually looked at what the box was saying, and I tried to compare it with the other box from the competitors. But to tell the truth, it was very complicated, and I'm not an expert. So I said, you know what? I'm going to try that one, and let's see what happens. So I made, if I'm satisfied, I will rebuy. If it does something, I will rebuy. But the other concept that you need to know is that there's a group of people, and this is extremely important, that will start the process. There's some people that care more than others. There's some people that have a higher understanding, some people that are more fan about a specific subject, and these people are very important because they will start the process. The adoption process, who is the most important group? Not the innovator. The most important group are the early adopters because they make the trend. They set the trend. The early adopters are way more important than the innovators. However, the spark that start the fire are the innovators. So any project that you're working on as an entrepreneur, you need to be very aware about who is the innovators and who they're going to spark the interest, who is the early adopters. When you get these two groups, this is enough fire normally to get to the 68%, which are the early majority and late majority. But you can't get to the 68% if you don't get this first group, which are the spark and the real fire that starts. The most important are the early adopters, and it's much easier for a new product to capture the attention of innovators because they're going to be going for it. It's new, it's better, I need it. But then does that fuel enough momentum to go to the next group? Maybe not. When you're looking at this concept of product life cycle, which is this slide, it's this concept that says not so much that we should be making more and more and more and more money, but it's this concept that there's product that go from birth to death, and therefore you need to sustain the growth of your company. And to sustain the growth of your company is you need to create new product. And if you create new product, you will have to understand that there's different strategy depending on the stage where the product is. There's different focus, different interests, and therefore what it says is that you're going to have to adapt your objectives and your strategies as you go. And so we're talking about scaling, and we're talking about scaling in terms of funding, where you start having the funding from your own money, and then you start looking for money from the other money that you can have. Maybe you start selling things, you can start sharing things, maybe you start asking your family, and then you go into angel investors, and then bigger angel investors, then you go into maybe incubators or maybe a VC, and then you go into a bank, maybe you go look for a small business a loan as well that will be provided through some kind of government association. So all of this is the idea that you have multiple products, and maybe you have one product, but this product, as it starts being a success and it goes through the innovators and the early adopters, you cannot just surf that wave. That wave of success needs to prepare for the next wave of success. I mean, if you're a musician and you have one really good song and you become top one of the charts, of the music charts, essentially you're in danger if you haven't done anything else, because that thing is not going to stay number one for very long. And if you have nothing else coming behind, you're going to be just a one trick pony with that song. So you need to have a set of songs, a set of products that are going to follow in order to balance what's more trendy, what's generating more profit, and all of this needs to be synced. When you are analyzing your market and your consumers, which is your main focus, and what they want, you need to look at what your competitors are doing, and this is called benchmarking. And benchmarking has 11 points. These 11 points are very important. These 11 points are going to be not asked per se in the quiz. You know, I'm not going to ask you, you know, when you're benchmarking, are you analyzing the prices or the positioning of your competitors or something else? I'm not asking you to memorize everything. I haven't done it in the past. I'm not going to do it in the future, but I want you to probably save that slide, which is most likely to happen in 90%, which is in 6 months, you go again, oh, I have to analyze my competitors. Hey, where was that thing from that French professor, whatever thing, and then you pull it out and you look at this. It's going to serve you. And in addition, it will serve you for working on your project right now when you're making analysis of your competitors by thinking about, let's see, did we look at what kind of trade leverage do they have, or did we analyze their targets and see if we are sharing the same targets or something like this. So it's a very good slide that I want you to be aware of. What's the basic things that you need to do when you're looking at a competitor? The 101 basic thing is do an analysis of their strength and of their weaknesses. That's the 101, the least you can do. When you looking at displaying, how do you present an analysis of your competitors? Here is, I think, the best way to present it. It's a chart. So a chart like this is essentially you have a column for the different competitors, and then you have the key elements that you think are very important to differentiate between the different competitors, and then you have check marks. Okay, and then you have check marks for your own company. And so this table that I'm showing you right now, not only it won't be in the quiz, but you should have it for when you make your presentation, mostly the last presentation. That's very important, not so much for the one sheet. Maybe you could have it for the go-to market, but for sure, for the startup report, you need to have something like this. If you're also looking for investors, I mean, this is a very compelling slide when you are looking for someone to invest in your company. This slide is very, very important because it shows in just a visual, powerful slide to show what's going on. The thing that I want to express here that is very important is the difference between strategies and tactics. So when you talk as an entrepreneur to investors, it's extremely important that you don't misunderstand and confuse things which are macro and things that are micro, strategy versus tactics. So try to always keep this in mind and have this. In consulting, it's called high level versus low level. When you speak high level and then go into the detail and explain, now I will go into some low level, and you can show the difference between the two levels. That's extremely important. When you talk about strategies, make sure that you have an understanding of the basic 4 strategies. The basic 4 strategies is something that you have to learn if you're in entrepreneurship, if you're in management, if you're in marketing. This is the 101, the entrepreneurship for dummies strategies, if you want. Basic. So these you've learned, you study them for the quiz. Don't be surprised if they reappeared because they are so basic that you want to learn about them. There's more strategies than these, but these I would say cover 70% of the situation, so that's very convenient. Just 4 helps you to do that. the next thing I want to talk about is there's one strategy which is more complicated. It's developing a new product. And that's why that one has more steps, and it's one that is illustrated by that slide. So very likely that you develop a new product, extremely likely that you will develop a new product. If you're wondering how to present it, this is the way to present it, is you have 8 stages. So when you present it on the last day of the class, present it using those 8 stages and explain what you've done. Being very clear about the fact that the ID generation is, if you have 5 ID, is that good? No. If you have 3 ID, is that good? It's worse. The more ID you have at the beginning, so it's okay to start a presentation saying, we had 72 IDs. For the sake of this presentation, we're not going to present 72. We're going to present the 4 best. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4. Out of those 4, we screen them, and we think the best one is number 2. So remember this, I discussed this many times for the last presentation, is when you're making a presentation as a consultant, as someone has to do with business to investors, don't undercut yourself. Tell them you have developed a brand. And before you created that brand, you created 150 brands that you've screened, to 50 brands that you screen, to 8 brands that you screen, to 2 brands, and this is the number 1 brand out of 150. People like this argument. This looks much more researched. It makes a stronger point, and it's the same thing when you're making a strategy. Is you didn't come up with 1 ID, and then 1 strategy, and then 1 product. If you're an investor, that's a no-no, because it shows that this person is a one-minded, 1 ID, 1-trick pony person. So all the strategies that I've discussed so many times in the previous class, so I won't go into great detail on them, but there's the cost leadership is when you're trying to have the lowest price. Focus is when you're trying to focus on a very specific target. Differentiation is when what you're going to do is have this product very separated from other consumers groups, and it's going to be very targeted to a specific group, but in a way, the way the product's going to function or what the product is going to do will be very different, and it's this differentiation from everyone else. You're being very disruptive in how this product is being used or it works. That's the strategy of differentiation. And in the middle of the road is when you're essentially trying to follow someone and you're not doing anything specific. So customer intimacy is another one, is when you're developing particular relationship with the customers, and the customers are maybe becoming part of your company in the sense that you're using them to develop new products, or maybe you are rewarding them for being such a close customers. You have using them for doing word of mouth. It's this idea that your customers are going to be so much part of everything that you do that that's going to create a strategic difference. Maybe it's the way your business is run that is different, and this is called operational excellence. Or maybe it's because your product is always the number 1 product, number 1 quality product, number 1 awarded product, number 1 best innovation, at least best innovation from the eye of the customers. There's a lot of products that are better innovation, but they don't get the label of having the leadership of innovation, and then we don't know about them. So all that matters is that you have product leadership, and it's known as being the best product, and it's believed as being the best product, and that's your strategy, is make them believe, be seen as, and that's what you're trying to do. Market leader is you have the largest market share. Market challenger is you learning from the number 1 in your industry. Market follower is you just following all the different things that everyone who's successful is doing. And market nicher is the same as focus. It's a strategy that consists in being very specific, very differentiated to a specific group of customers, and doing everything for that narrow segment. So when you develop a product, you have to develop it having a strategy, but you also need to have some sub-strategies, strategies at the P level of the product mix. So you cannot go in being an entrepreneur without realizing that you can't just work on the promotion and the product. You also have to take into consideration the distribution and then the promotion. So obviously the promotion now is a big element that nobody is ignoring because of social media. Everyone is very aware of this. And so promotion has lost some of this situation where people used to forget. So I want to do a little case study because this has been such a product that was an icon of the most famous brands in the world, Coca-Cola. Could someone make a new Coca-Cola? And the answer has, for hundreds of years, been very difficult to compete. You know, and it was the same. Can you compete against IBM? And it has been done. Can you compete against Coca-Cola? And it has been done. The brand that you're looking at right now, some of those brands are the number one or number two or number three in the markets where they belong to. Because in these markets, there was an opportunity where you could develop a brand that was more local. So being more local, having cultural trends, having opportunities that could be seized is something that is changing how brands can go. This brand is a real brand. This is not me doing Photoshop. It's called Coca-Cola, and it's a brand that was created for Muslims. And so the Muslims, not all the Muslims, but a particular group of Muslims consume Coca-Cola, and eventually they feel that this may not be a brand that is very representative of their belief because it's very American. And so since they are going after things that are non-American, they're looking for a soda that is non-American. So some Muslim individual saw this opportunity of creating a Muslim cola, and he called it Coca-Cola. And Coca-Cola was created about 10 years ago, and now it's a multi-billion-dollar in the Middle East, selling Coca-Cola for Muslims that believe in the concept of having a brand which is local, a brand that is non-American, and a brand that actually makes donation for causes which have to do with things that are very close to some of the Muslims, such as helping with Palestine and so forth. So, very interesting. This is a brand that is from France. Braise is it's like the Irish or the Scottish, they have a language, and their language is also in the Basque country in Spain, and it's also in an area in France called Brittany. It's called Gaelic. So that's their language. And the Gaelic language, if you look at the word braise means Brittany in Gaelic. And so someone in Brittany created the braise cola, which is the cola made in Brittany from a garage soda making that now is a multi-billion-dollar company. So there is a trend for people to make more local things and prefer to support local businesses. And we see now this with the coronavirus, where they're telling you, try to buy local, try to buy things locally. That way you can help those restaurants and the things that are close to where you live and help and so forth. So this concept of local is an opportunity that has been taken by some businesses. And they were very much entrepreneurship programs. So when you're an entrepreneur and you have to make an argument, there's a market, is you have to analyze and measure the size of your market. So when you start, is you have the total available market, meaning all the people who are buying the certain product that you're selling. So the total available number of people that buy cola sodas is hundreds of millions of people. And then you have the number of people that are serviceable in your market. So maybe in Brittany, the number of people that buy cola in Brittany is 350,000. And then you define, and this is based on an argument that you have to create, that you can capture 5% of those 350,000 the first year, and then another 2% the second year, and another 3% the third year. So you'll have 5, 7, and 10%. And this is multiplied, this 10%, by the serviceable market. So it was 350, and 350 after 3 years, now you're selling to 35,000 people. So it's not rocket science, it's just coming up with an argument. The one that is the more complex is how do you make up the penetration rate, that you're going to sell 1% the first year, or you're going to sell 2.3% the first year. So that's why sometimes marketing is irritating some people because they're very Cartesian. They are like like exact science, and they wonder how anyone could pull a number like this out of a hat. So marketers don't pull numbers out of a hat. They make conjectures. Conjectures is they try to make an argument based on something that has happened somewhere else, or maybe a similar introduction in a market that was that looked like this market for a similar product, and they find this data, and then they use this data for their own situation, and then everyone has to take this as an evidence. Here's an example in the music industry. This was done by students prior to this year, where they were looking for mental health services. And so they were looking at the number of musicians in the United States, 40,000, that's your TAM. The number of musicians in the looking for the particular service that you want to offer, 7,220, looking for mental services. And then they said we could have a 12% penetration rate in Los Angeles for these people. And so they multiplied the SAM by the 12%, and this is how they found the potential number of customers. And then they made another calculation on how much are they going to spend, these people, and then they multiply this by the amount that we're going to spend, and that way they have the total amount that could be expected from the first 2-3 years launching this product. So this is very much expected. You probably have you worked on this on Saturday? I'm just trying to check. Last Saturday? No. Okay, so if you have not, you need to be careful, because if you look at the samples for what you will be presenting on Saturday, you will see that the samples all have this analysis of how much you're expecting the market to be. You have to make some forecasts. Imagine the one sheet is to show a good friend that you're going to ask some money. So it's not very complicated, but your good friend will want to know, is this a small market? Is this a big market? What is the potential? So you have to talk about the potential from the get-go. Even for yourself, you're starting this enterprise, is you starting to write a few pages about planning things, is you want to have some idea of what's the potential. Here's another example. This is for a cassette tape market. So you have the total number of people that listen to music. This is your TAM, so 5 billion. The total number of people that purchase physical music, so it's much smaller, 2 billion. And then the obtainable market, the sum that they will eventually be able to get after 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. So it was very low, 1%. And then that makes the number of potential money that you will be making for this introduction of this product. Okay, so I think from my experience, nobody has ever had a problem with this.
Professor?
Yes, but the penetration rate, that's the hardest part.
Just a question with an idea. You'll get to hear our idea pretty soon.
Yes.
But before I forget the question later on.
Yes, good idea.
With for this particular thing, with an idea that targets both listeners and artists, do we have to do 2 different streams for the?
Yes, exactly. Very well. So yes, you have to do two. And because it's 2 different targets, and that's why I tell you now, what you need to think, and your team needs to think is, and so what I'm going to tell you is, I don't want to sound like I'm making your life easier because of the coronavirus. That's what I say every time. And because of the format of the class and all this. Here, you're doing 2 things. Is you working on a real project, but at the same time is you completing an assignment for a class. So you want to do it as good as you can because you care about yourself. You want to learn. Maybe you want to do it even better than that because you care about what you're doing, because you may want to use it. Good motivation. However, there's also the process of the assignment, which means that you don't want to lose an eye working very hard on this assignment. You want to make it as easy as possible, as efficient as possible to get an A. So sometimes the students, they wonder, it's like a weird professor is telling us to do less. I'm telling you, be efficient. So being efficient means that if I was you, and I think you will have the intelligence to understand, is when I will present, is I will identify that there's two groups. But for the sake of the introduction, even though those two groups are very good at the beginning, you want to focus your resources on one. And you think that you want to really master that one for the next 2 years, and you do your project on 2 years. And then you say, once this is achieved on year 3, we will go for the second one that we presented. But when we do our sum, we'll do it just on one. So I'm not telling you to be lazy. I'm telling you to be efficient. That way you don't have to do, because the problem is if you have two targets, then you may have to have 2 products. If you have 2 products, you're going to have 2 mix. And therefore you're going to have to present more. Therefore you're going to have, yeah, you understand what I'm saying? So for the sake of doing it better, I'm not saying this is not cheating. This is sort of making it more realistic and making it easier. Yes, go ahead. There was someone else asking a question, sorry.
Sorry,
Yes.
Are we gonna have this slide up there? 'Cause I understand like what you mean by the penetration rate, but how exactly do I get that percentage?
Okay, so that's the hardest part. The penetration. So let's say I go back to this, and so a penetration rate here is, you say, how can we get the penetration rate? We're launching this. So maybe you find that there was another company that launched a new soda somewhere in another area in the world. And you found that they also had $300,000 of resources. And you found that they had a similar type of situation, and you found that they were able to do this much sales the first year. And you found that this much sales was essentially that they were able to cover 2% of the market. So then your argument will be, we looked for analogous, like similar type of situation, either in a different industry, or either in a different market, or in a different product. And we found that in this situation, they had a penetration rate of 1%. And then that's your argument. So we believe that we can achieve 1% because they were able to achieve 1%.
And that's just like common knowledge, like something you can like Google another business and figure out what their penetration rate is, and then I just apply it to my
Yes.
business if it's the same. Okay.
Exactly.
I'm thinking like this is like a real math equation. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, no, this one, you're right. It's not a math. Nobody has created that math equation to create the penetration rate. So I cannot give you a formula to create it. You have to come up with the argument for what it would be, like a lawyer would do. It's more of a lawyer. It's based on these evidence. So then I look at the evidence. We don't say 1% is good because it's not too big, or we don't say 1% is bad because it's too little. We're not judging the number, we're judging the argument that you're using in order to come up with this number. So it's a lawyer position that we're going to judge you as a judge for the case a lawyer is using based on the evidence. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. How long is it going to take to learn this and figure out what to do? 5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes for some people. What's going to take time is the penetration rates, because you're going to have to find the argument. So there's things that take time, there's things that don't take time. And that's why I want to tell you, if you have 2 targets, I will recommend you focus on one. What did I say? What I think you should do is, when you're an entrepreneur, you should be differentiated. And differentiated means you have 1 target. That's better. For the sake of this project, I have 1 target. Don't make it harder on yourself. Mention it, but make it easy. Now the penetration rate, spend some time for a strong argument. That way you cannot be looked like this percentage. Because I know Brian and I, when there's stuff like this, we're in the room, even just in the room, I sort of look at him when I see a percentage, and he looks at me and he goes, And I know it's like, yeah, this percentage is BS. And that's or we may not say anything. And then we talk and say, did you see that percentage? Did you understand? No, I didn't understand. This is crazy. So be careful. These are big no-no. And for an investor.
But how do you know? How do you know that that percentage is BS though? If I have an argument that's
no, but it's
saying
no, but if your argument says, oh, we're gonna do a soda, and what we figure out is that the people became richer in the area in the past 10 years by 20%. So we did 20% divided by 10%, and 10% is the penetration rate. And then I go, what? How did you get right? This is like a joke.
Okay.
It's just coming up with a number.
Okay,
and it's like hoping that we didn't hear it. And then we go, what?
Professor.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like a lawyer. You know, look, this person didn't kill this person. Because my argument is that, look at their face. They look too cute. And it's like, cute? Cute doesn't make you not or unguilty. So that's what I'm trying to say. So you have to find a strong argument for the penetration rate.
Professor, so looking at the penetration rate just by a number, it made me think like, well, perhaps an argument could be, think of something like Tidal. Remember Tidal, the platform that Jay-Z had.
Yeah.
So could we say he was the penetration rate? Because he put himself exclusively in that platform. So when it comes to looking at it in the value of the penetration rate in his company, it wasn't so much about who can we, if we were to look at it from the artist's point of view, right? Like, it's not the same having him as having an unknown artist. So we cannot bag the same people under one number.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So you cannot say, you know, it's like we're going to take a bunch of unknown people that are very talented and we're going to have a 20% penetration rate. If that was Jay-Z, maybe, but unknown talented people, no. So then you have to compare apple to apple. And then show, oh, this unknown people did this show and they got 2%. These very famous people did this show and they got 20%. So then we're going to figure out, since we are not known, we're going to be 2%. Like the average of these unknown people. Then I look at that. I mean, this, it's like check mark. Makes sense. Next. So perfect. I was not sure I understood you, but yes, then I got it. Perfect. Next. But the big problem, and I'm glad you said that, Cyrus, because we see this all the time, is the people would say exactly what you said. It's like, Jay-Z did this and they did 20%. So therefore we figure we're going to be 20%. And then we go, wow, they don't understand what's an argument. That happens a lot. A lot, like 70% of the time, I would say, if not more, that people make that mistake. So this slide is a repeat of things that you may have seen. It's a repeat of what I had before, where I'm really emphasizing the fact that when you present the one sheet, the go-to-market, and the final presentation, is you need to have a very clear view about what are the opportunities that are macro, what are the opportunities that are micro, is it that we say that it's strategic, what is it that we say that it's tactical. That is very, very important, and that's going to make your presentation look very professional because you constantly and continuously master the two levels, the big picture and the small details. If at the end, your presentation is a bag of small details, it's not good. I will feel very personal failure, to be honest. That's the way I am. If there's a team that presents a bag of details, a bag of tactics, I will feel much better if you come and you give all the strategic things, and then you, inside the boxes is you say what you're going to do in terms of tactics. So that's what you did in the previous class, and I know very well because I was I received it, and so I know that you have this. You understand it. Do this again. Don't think this was a class you check market and you don't do it the rest of your life. You have to have this thinking: high level, low level. And to make the argument, it's always like this. It's small steps make big steps. So when you present them, it's always the big picture, the small pictures, and how all of this argument comes together. So this slide, this was Hélène, I think, that just was talking just before. All of what you see right now is inside Canvas already. Huh? So I'm supplying all of this because I want you to be able to go back to it without having to go back maybe to the other class if you want to. A lot of it is already sort of digested and available here. This
Thank
slide
you
is
so
just,
much. I
yeah.
appreciate that.
So that's why I refer to you, because I thought that was what you were also saying. So this slide that you're looking at right now is the same as this, but this is sort of a picture and this is words. It's the same thing. There are big ideas and small ideas that go underneath. It's very well organized because you have the name of the sub-strategies which are connected to each one of the promotion, P, and all of this. So all of this is how you want to bring it up. This is also a slide. This slide, I made it myself, but I wish I saw that 20 years ago, because this is a very simple thing that explains how you run planning. And it's always like this. It's top to bottom or bottom to the top, but you know where everything fits. Then when you're talking about products, you have to talk about your product portfolio. And if you remember this, I had the portfolio here, but you're starting with a new company, so you don't have the portfolio. However, you have to talk about where do the product fit. So I want you to remember that you have to have a product portfolio, and inside this, you can have probably some different variation of this product. So there will be some depth. So if I take a yogurt, for example, you have the plain yogurt and you have the flavored yogurt, and then you have the diet yogurt and you have the organic yogurt, and all of this is part of the depth of just your yogurt. Next to this, you may have ice cream, and that's just another type of product. So when you talk about what you're going to do, maybe you're going to work on a new festivals, maybe you're going to have just multiple festivals or just one festivals, and you're going to have different layer of activities within the festivals, and each one of these are going to be part of different services. So you're going to have to be really able to present this and explain how do they fit inside the portfolio of the company that you have created. Then going back to this, because this is always important, and this is about the brand, is the equity of the brand. Is you're going to build the equity of the brand by creating some actions that will have to do with communicating, informing, and some actions that will have to do with persuading and getting people to buy. So you're going to try to create communication to get some customers that will buy the product, customers that will care about the product, and eventually you will use these people to grow some kind of dynamic. So you have the 4 Ps, but inside the 4 Ps, promotion is made of multiple functions. So I wanted to remind you this. And then next is reminding you of the pull and push strategies. Pull and push strategies is not just something that you learn at the university. It's used, and that's what's going to be the difference between you and the rest of the world, is you are in the music industry, but you have been trained as if you're going to run, you can run any big corporation after you get this training. And you speak the language of the corporation, and therefore you running this very professionally, so you can talk about the difference between push and pull. And they are opposite type of plan. The pull is you essentially working directly to the consumers, and your relationship in terms of communication is gaining consumer appeal. And the consumer appeal is what's going to build your business, because consumer wants your product. So everyone is going to say, I want this product. All the distributors, the publishing company, everyone's going to want to work with you because of the pull. The pull is very expensive, even though now you can get pulled through social media for much cheaper, but it takes a lot of resources and time. The push is the one that is very much, you doing your concerts and you going around and you creating and you placing information and you trying to get support from other professionals to help you grow. And so best case scenario is to do both. With limited resources is you end up oftentimes doing more push than pull. And as you get more and more resources and more confident through technology and social media, is you can use more pull. But both are very important. When you talk about distribution, is you have different level of distribution. Intensive, you start to distribute everywhere. Selective, just a few places, and exclusive just limited to some. So why so many products fail? So many products fail because the business people didn't have the experience. They thought this business was much bigger than it was. They were not focused on solving a problem. They were focused on the idea. So you have to have this concept, which is that you're satisfying a need, and that need is essentially a problem that you're satisfying, and you're a problem solver. You're not a product maker. You're not making products. You're not into manufacturing. You're into serving needs. They didn't think about the targets. Their definition of the target is it's everyone, or it's a very bland and undetailed target definition, and therefore they don't know this. They were PST versus being PSTP or STP. I discussed this in the class a lot, which is that they were about who they are instead of thinking about who do people want them to be. They didn't have a marketing plan. They failed because they had no plan. They had no discussion. They didn't have a one sheet. They had nothing. They were just winging the entire thing. And when you ask them, what is your strategy? They say, the strategy is in my head. I got it figured out. And then you go, wow. So, you know, we had someone representing VC today. And those people, they see that. You know, I mean, it's like Shark Tank. When you see the program, how many people do they present? 6. Do you think these were 6 random that got there? No. You know, the last time that I got an invitation for Shark Tank? Yesterday. The last time I got an invitation for Shark Tank. So they invite people constantly. They invite hundreds of thousands of people. Then these people respond. Then they send them an email and say, what do you want to do? You know, 20 lines. What do you want to do? Then they read them. Then they read these. Out of 100,000, there's 20,000 that says, okay, make a video of yourself of a pitch. Then of these 20,000, then they give 400, go to Las Vegas to that hotel. Then you go to Las Vegas to the hotel, and then they do groups. And then they pitch in that groups. And out of this, then they keep 25, and then they send 25 to the studio, because that's money for them. And then in the studio, they do the video and all that, and then they go, oh, you know what? That guy is not cute. Everything else is good. That guy is, his face is no good for TV. Because it's also a show. You're no good for TV, get up. And so that's what I want to say there. So if you have no plan, if you don't know what you know, the one thing I can tell you that I know is it's the 60 seconds, the power of the 60 seconds. In 60 seconds, what is your company about? If you can't do it in 60 seconds, you're dead. So you have to be able to do it in 20 seconds. What is different about you? What is different about your company? Why would people care? Why would people change? Right? So no plan. Never they spend the time. The number of consulting projects that I do, and I ask the client to say, tell me very quick, why would people care about you? And then you see the business owner like, why? And they've just survived. They never thought of why. Very, very important. They have no J&D. They don't understand J&D. They just wing it. There's bad timing sometimes. I mean, you know, it's kind of scary, but I started my business in 2008. 2008 was the one of the big depression in America. I was selling expensive cognac. So I was all excited. Hey, let's do expensive cognac, 2008. So then it's like, oh, Frank, you're lucky. You're selling expensive cognac in 2008? That's exactly what people don't want to spend money on. And when people told me that, I said, great. So I'm going to go see the suppliers, and I'm going to know that they're struggling, and I'm going to ask them to help me. That's how I turned it around. So what happened is in 2008, was I selling a lot of cognac? No. How much cognac did you sell in 2008? Don't tell anyone. None. Was I screwed? Yes. Was I telling that to the suppliers? No. I was going to the suppliers and say, hey, you know, I need a price for the bottle. I know you're screwed like me. Can you give me a price? Normally, I know it's $1, but right now you're screwed. Give it to me for 50 cents. They will give it to me for 50 cents. I need liquid. I want liquid cheaper. So I bargained everyone. I reduced the prices, and I asked them for delay of payment. You're not selling anything. It's in your warehouse right now. Normally, what's your delay? 60 days. I need 6 months. Are you crazy? You're not selling anything. Okay, I'm not selling anything. You're not selling anything. I may as well trust you. I have nothing to lose. I give you 6 months. Then boom, I was selling. And then I was going, yes, I don't have the money to cover all of this, but they all gave me such a long delay of payment. Timing was perfect. When people asked me, I said, I was so lucky that I started my business when it was depression because I got easiness, bootstrapping of payment like nobody else. People were giving me 6 months to pay. So I turned it around. Like right now, I'm scratching my head. This is bad. How can I turn this around? I haven't figured it out yet, to tell you the truth. Right now, I'm screwed. And I have to buy a partner. So I have to spend money before I make money. And once I get him out, I'm going to work on something. I'm going to turn this around. But the timing is very important. So think about what is going on. You don't want to say, oh, I got unlucky because of bad timing. It's for everyone. And the timing can be good. It may look bad, but it could be good. So no budget and no forecasting. So what happens is everything costs always more money than you think. They didn't budget it. They get to spend more. Things get scaled up. They didn't anticipate. They don't run out of money. They have to close the business. They were tactical instead of being strategic. So they never thought of the big picture. They only thought about the details. And therefore, they failed. They had no vision, no mission. So it means they didn't really know why they were doing that. We're doing that to change the world. What are you trying to change in the world? I don't know. What's your big plan? You know, what is your big plan? And that's very, very important. I mean, for example, for the cognac, what is my big plan? Is cognac, 99% of the cognac is mass produced. 99% of the cognac comes from a huge factory that looks like a tire factory, like a Goodyear factory. And yet it's very expensive. So what I do, it's like Chobani. I'm doing the Chobani of cognac. So I go see everyone. I say, give me your best milk. Don't give it to anyone, the best milk. And then I'm going to sell that best product to a very unique group of distributors, to a unique group of people that care for this. And it's step by step building the reputation that there is a real cognac people don't know. And it's right there. And there's people that care for real cognac. They don't have to have the same mass-produced Listerine type of cognac. It can be one that is delicious and smooth. And so that's what I do. So how to reduce marketing costs? Word of mouth. Setting goals and monitoring them, making sure you're cost effective. Using brokers. Brokers are those beautiful people that you can use in between. They speed up the process. They're going to take a commission. They're going to increase your price, but they will speed it up. Think about the concept of push and pull. Make sure that you know that the cost of them and where it costs more and where it costs less. That's why, you see, if you don't know all of these things and you go in entrepreneurship, it's like going to the war and not knowing how to shoot a rifle or how to load a rifle, how to clean your rifle. And you just think you're made of steel. I'm made of steel. I'm going to go to the war. It's going to be easy. I'm made of steel. And then someone gives them a gun. What the heck is that? And bullets. And then they go, run, 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 run. Like, man, this is tough. And they're learning on the field. And that's why there's so many businesses that fail. 80% of the businesses fail because they don't know what they get themselves into. Push and pull. What are you talking about? It's a big difference in costs and benefits. Brand equity. How are you building your brand equity? Are you investing in your brand? Are you short-term versus long-term oriented? Too short-term oriented, you're not reducing your marketing costs. Your marketing costs are reduced by being brand equity focused. You're not doing cross-marketing. You're not thinking about doing concentrated targeting strategies, which means that you eventually, not usually at the beginning, but as your business grows, is you starting to put several targets together. So it is very good to have multiple targets at the beginning, but it's very expensive. So you only have one, only have two. As your business grows, you have more targets. And as your business grows, then you start putting targets together. And as you put targets together, you start reducing your marketing costs because you have more consumers a lot of products, but you're not producing too many products to keep up with this differentiated targeting strategy, is you're producing a plateau number of products because you're starting to concentrate the people. Having less products as well, you know, by looking at the product, the BCG matrix, by looking at the one that makes the most profit, by looking at phasing out products that don't generate as much income. Should entrepreneurs focus on developing their business ideas? So be careful. That's a dangerous one. Entrepreneurs should not really develop their business ideas. They should, but they should be very careful, because ideas are not what makes a business successful. What makes a business successful is that there are opportunities to support the idea. So entrepreneurs should not really focus on their business ideas. Ideas may be too personal, too close to what you think is good. Who cares for your idea? Lots of people care for your ideas. Go for it. But don't fall in love with your ideas. Don't fall in love with yourself. And then think that everyone's going to like it because it's you. And you're sort of chosen by God. I make this sound like a joke, but there's a lot of people that think like this. They think they're better than everyone else. Again, it's part of this being humble. And they believe that they will be successful because of who they are. Investors do not like to invest on ideas. You have someone that comes, you're a VC, you listen to that person. If it's their idea and you can see it's very personal, you're very worried, because what happens is, as you're going to start working, you're going to get a lot of no, no, no. And the no, no, no are going to come because people don't so much care for ideas, is they care for arguments. They care for forecasts, for budgeting. They care for penetration rates. They care for the argument of the penetration rate, not the ideas. Ideas tends to be monodimensional, which means they are lacking of the professional argument that is required to make investors believe in you. They're too often focused on product. So my idea is to make this new product. Essentially, what I want to do is make a new product. Why are you making a new product? What's the purpose? Who would care? What is it that you're doing that is better than what's been done? So entrepreneurs focusing on ideas tend to minimize the importance of the customer. Is they maximize the importance of the value of the product and the fact that people buy quality products. People don't buy quality products. People buy what they think is quality. Therefore, what people want is what you make, and then make them believe it's quality. People are not the best advocates of quality. They are not. There's some people that are experts, but for the most part, people buy common denominators. The most sold car in America is a white Toyota Camry. If you love cars, if you become a billionaire, you don't dream of white Toyota Camry. It's not the best car. People like average. It's very sad, but that's what it is. So the most successful restaurant in the world is McDonald's. If you're a foodie, you don't think McDonald's is great. That's what I'm trying to say. People like the average, okay? And that is very, very important. So when you make music, it's the same. Sad to say, you know. So what beat should you do? What beat is popular? 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Okay, let's make it 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. And what words are popular? Oh my love, oh my love. Say oh my love 20 times. Yeah, but doesn't that look like X, Y, and Z? Yeah. But it's popular. You will be successful. So unfortunately, that's a little bit what you have to do. And so you do this thing, which is just a blend that every average person is going to like. And then you make this one thing a little bit different. And then people go, oh, that's different. Because if it's too different, they're going to wait for everybody else. That's the general rule. But that doesn't mean it's true, because there's mavericks, there's disruptors, entrepreneurs, people that come with something totally different. And then they become super successful and they create a new movement. Agreed. But I'm telling you both. I'm telling you, if you want, you can be the biggest disruptor of the universe and be successful. Or you can be someone who's successful 7 times 70% of the time. And to do that is take the average and add something. That's how you become successful 70% of the time. Okay, so so yeah, focus on opportunities. All right, so I said that so many times. I'm trying to be very obvious. Yeah, it's like the last 5 lines have 20 times the word opportunities. Should the last one is important are failures for entrepreneurs. So maybe this sounds like a transition segue from the previous class. Is one can learn from a book how to be an entrepreneur, but the best way to be one is to become one, is to do it. I mean, there's many entrepreneurs that says that books are not good at all. And what they're trying to say is that people that read a book and then they say, oh, I'm not ready yet. Read the second book, I'm not ready yet. They're never going to do anything, because all they're going to do is they're going to be waiting for confirmation. They're going to wait for someone to come and tap them in the back and go baby, you can do it, baby. And entrepreneurs are not like this. Entrepreneurs are people, it's inside, it's boiling. They're not listening to anyone. If that's how they are and they have an idea, they're going to auto-destroy. They listen to nobody and they say, I have this great idea and I'm not going to listen to anyone. They're going to auto-destroy. But if they say, you know what, I don't need to listen to all these people. I found the opportunity. I got my plan organized. I got my budget secured. I know what I'm doing. I know it's going to be difficult. Even everything is planned. It's not going to work as planned. It's going to be changing the environment, but I'm going to adapt. I'm ready. They are more likely to succeed. But if they don't embrace failures, is they constantly going to be worried of failing. And therefore, that's going to stop them to move. You don't want to be stopped to move. You want to keep moving, and you want to learn from your mistakes to make an adjustment. It's not masochist in the sense that you go, let's start this business. I can't wait to make mistakes. But it's a little bit like this. It's like, let's start today so I can see my first mistake when I wake up in the morning. And then you wake up in the morning, quick. Mistakes, great. What can I learn? How can I do it better? I want my mistakes. Where are my mistakes? I want to adjust them. It sounds crazy what I'm saying, but that's absolutely true. Is you want to see changes so you can adapt. You're not worried about mistakes. It's part of the process. Perfection is the enemy of good. Entrepreneurs should not seek perfection, but momentum. The concept I discussed in class of Darwinership is very much this. That you have to do something. If you do nothing, you're not an entrepreneur. The quality of an entrepreneur is to seize opportunities and to adjust, not to be a zero risk person that's trying to survive by avoiding to be hurt. No, you go. You know, it's like, it's funny. I did martial arts since I'm 6 years old. And when I went to college, I said to myself, you know, I'm a loser because I did martial arts. It's not really fight. I need to go fight. So I didn't go to the extreme, which is to go to a bar and then pick a fight for no reason. And then you can say, that's good training. So I said, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to do boxing. So that was in the 80s. I went to do boxing. Everyone that was boxing again were people that either no parents or parents in jail or no food on the table. I was a well-to-do kid. And this was really tough because those guys, they didn't care to have a broken hip or to have a bleeding nose. You see, I still have a crooked nose. And I said, you know what? That's how I'm going to learn to box, is by boxing. I can look at all of these videos. I can look at Mike Tyson and go, you know what? I can do like Mike Tyson. All you need to do is you throw yourself and make the biggest punch and punch them in the nose, you know? And it's easy. You look at the video and then you try to do it in your room in front of the mirror. It's very easy. I said, no, to be a boxer, you need to go box. And you need to go box with people boxing you, not some video game, Wii or whatever it's called. You don't do that. So you go And then you go, and that's when you learn to box. But you learn from your mistakes. And you get punched, and you learn from those punches. And eventually you get less and less punch. And eventually you start punching too. And then that's becoming really fun. And eventually you become smart and you stop boxing as well. So that's the other thing. But anyhow, so same concept there. Failures is part of the process. And you have to have the stamina, which is that there's going to be a lot of no's. And there's going to be a lot of people that don't want to help. There's going to be a lot of people that don't believe in what you're doing it because they see it as a risk. They don't have this vision. They are more negative than positive. So you have to have this optimism that it will succeed, but because you want to have a sort of the power of the mind as well. If you keep thinking you're going to fail, you're going to fail. If you keep thinking that you're going to succeed, you're more likely to succeed. But you have to give yourself the means, which is that if all you do is thinking, it's not going to work. If you do a lot, you will fail. If you think a lot, that you will succeed. It's going to help you go through these failures to learn from them and adjust and then do good again. So it's a good cycle. It's a mental cycle. Being an entrepreneur is a mental game. It's a mental game against yourself and against everyone else that thinks that you're a loser and that's not going to work. And you're going to be a loser and you're going to fail. And they're waiting for that. All right. So now I want to talk about legal foundation. And the idea behind legal foundation is the same as being a business person, is you cannot not have some kind of legal plan from the very beginning. Am I alone? Am I with someone else? We need to have a little document that says what you're going to do, what you expect, what am I going to do, what am I expect. You need to look for an attorney. So you need to have multiple types of attorneys. You need to have attorneys that are very, very expensive and very powerful. And you need to have attorneys that are very affordable. Why is this? It's because it depends. I mean, one time I had an issue with the Grammys, against the Grammys, because of one event that I was sponsoring. I was sponsoring the Grammys, and with my cognac company. And unfortunately, I had a rapper, or the manager of a rapper, that was essentially negotiating for me. But that guy was a crook. I didn't know that. And he was negotiating for me, saying all the things that he was saying was me telling him, but he was trying to make money in between. I mean, this is your industry. You know what I'm talking about. It's very dog eat dog. And so I didn't know that. I thought he was a business person doing business, but it was, that's not just in the music industry, it's everywhere. That guy was just, and so eventually I got a really dirty letter from the Grammys. And when I got this letter, it was not a Grammy lawyer, it was from a law firm. So then I looked what was this law firm. So it was a huge law firm in Atlanta. And so when you send a letter to that huge law firm, because it was nasty what they were asking me, this was it was not good. And I had done nothing wrong. It was this guy misrepresenting me. So I didn't go to my BB gun lawyer. I went to my bazooka lawyer. The same thing in LA, the big law firm in LA. So that was a $750 letter, which I drafted myself. So when I give it to them, it was already done with my way of writing, which is not bad, but I'm not a lawyer. And therefore it took them just an hour to fix my letter and send me an invoice for $750. So when the Grammy got the letter, it was a nice letter that I knew everything about because I had done it myself, fixed by a lawyer from the biggest law firm in LA that works in the music industry. So when they got this, everybody recognized each other. So then we spoke in the phone and it was a different tone of voice and it was done. I'm pretty sure, and that's just an example, if I send them my BB gun lawyer, they would have been barking at the guy and there would have been a second letter and third letter and fourth letter and all of this. So you have to understand this. This thing about law is you can lose your business on this. It's very, I mean, maybe you've had that. I had this phone call where someone called me and say, I'm from the IRS and you own $1 million, you didn't pay this and you cheated this and all that. And I was like, did I cheat on this? Man, I don't remember. And eventually suddenly I'm like, where am I calling you from? That's none of your business. And I said, IRS people don't call you and they don't speak to you like this. This is BS. Bye. And I put the phone down. And then it happened again and again. And it happened to all of us, and maybe to people that you know. The first time that you get this phone call, you're really worried. And the more you get it, the less you worry, because then you get used to all this spam and scams and all of this. But the first time, you're very worried. You know, it's like the first time that you get dropped by your girlfriend, you know, when you were a kid. I mean, that's the end of the world, you know. And then it's okay. It's part of life. You adjust. Being an entrepreneur is like this. There's a lot of ins and outs, friends and no friends, enemies and all that. Lawyers come and lawyers go, and this and letters, this and all that. And so knowing a lawyer is good. Knowing what they're good at is very important. My little advice to you, then you do what you want. If you have several members, is you need to have some kind of founders agreement. Who owns what? What do they bring? Do they bring sweat equity? Do they bring material? Do they bring existing copyrights? Do they bring money? What do they bring? Okay. The idea is you want to avoid legal disputes. Are you going to get legal disputes? Yes. And you get legal disputes. There's nothing you can do. It's constant. And that's why some people stop being entrepreneurs, because they're tired of this mess of legal disputes. You know, I owned a bakery franchise at one time. And my partner was a billionaire. He was a prince from Saudi Arabia. And I was trying to keep this very quiet, because if I give you the name, you Google him and you find he's maybe number 12 richest man in the world. So I was avoiding everyone to know about this, but then some people found out. The number of staff that did slip and fall after they found that this guy was in the business, it was like every week there was a slip and fall suddenly. Every week there was a sexual harassment. And that was because of having this guy known now. And then I went, oh. So then I put cameras in the bakery, and then there was no more slip and fall and sexual harassment. But I didn't have the camera, and people were abusing it. So avoiding legal disputes is very important. People are out there going after you all day. It's unbelievable. Another thing is the government is making it hard for everyone, and they like your money. So they ask for permits and license all the time. So you cannot pretend that this is la la land, that you can do what you want, because you need all of this license, all these permits, all of these insurances, all of these things all the time. And you cannot pretend that you don't know. So you have to be very careful in everything you do, that you have all of that. And then what kind of form of ownership you're going to have? The form of ownership really depends on what you have to lose and what industry you are on, and what kind of taxes you want to pay, and what kind of partners you have. If you don't have any partners, sole proprietorship. You have nothing to lose, sole proprietorship. You don't make that much money, sole proprietorship. You don't have much assets to lose, sole proprietorship. Now you own a house, you're married, you sell knives, you know, so you sell alcohol, you do these things. Then you want a corporation, a partnership, not sole proprietorship. You want some protection. Now you have some partners that are from the USA versus you have some partners that are from overseas. Then different corporation will take people from overseas, and some don't. There's the C Corp and there's the S Corp. So different type of partnership having overseas people, different type of deduction that you can take. So the deduction have been pretty much the same for the past 25 years, and they've changed a lot. 2 years ago, Trump changed a lot of this corporation type of deduction and so forth. The liability is the same between corporation and limited liability company. The advantage of limited liability company compared to corporation is limited liability company are easier to run in terms of the requirements, the administrative requirements. So there's more administrative tasks when you take a corporation, S Corp or a C Corp, than a limited liability. The issue is limited liability is that you cannot have the same deduction as the corporation. So it's a pass-through through the limited liability, and it's a pass-through to the S Corp. With the C Corp, you have other type of tax deduction that are more convenient when you start making more money. Also, a limited liability cannot go public. Limited liability is also minimize the number of partners that you can have versus corporation have much larger number of partners. So it doesn't mean that if you have a big company, you should have just a corporation and that LLC are for small companies. No, a Chrysler, which is a big American company, is an LLC. So you can be a big company and be an LLC. So it is rather complicated to tell you more than what I'm telling you right now, because there's more to it, and that could be a whole class in itself for a semester. But I wanted to touch on these very quick. So I'll explain this.
Why isn't Chrysler a corporation instead of an LLC, if I may ask?
So I would think it's because Chrysler was bought by Fiat. And I believe it was a corporation before it was bought by Fiat. So Fiat changed I think it was a C Corp into an LLC based on how they managing probably the dividends that the company makes. Maybe the dividends are the allocation of the money, the profit.
Oh, okay.
So maybe they wanted something simpler because they have a large amount of shares, and therefore they didn't need to have this with multiple people. Maybe they own 90% and then someone else owned 10%. So they made it simpler by having an LLC. Maybe it's also easier because they are a foreign company, and the concept of LLC is more connected with the type of legal structure that you can have in Europe with the structure that they are running. I mean, Fiat is running multiple companies. You know, they have Lancia, Alfa Romeo, Ferrari, and many other smaller brands. And maybe so there's some reason that are very specific to what Fiat wanted to do, and it changed when they acquired the company. So I suppose it came from there.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
So then the other things before I move to the next subject is copyrights. So I'm not going to go into a long definition of copyright, patent, and trademark for the simple reason that you had a class on that, a full class just on these concepts. So I know from past history that you're very comfortable with this. So copyrights and patents and trademarks are intellectual property assets, which are very different. The copyright is very much the content of an idea, essentially, to summarize it. Without the patent versus the patent is based on how something works, so the mechanic of something, or how something is being used. So there's multiple type of patents. Patents are much more complicated to protect. I mean, much more, like 1,000 times more complicated to protect patents than they are to protect copyrights. Copyrights are simpler. To get registered, a copyright is much cheaper. You don't need a lawyer to get copyrights. Versus patents, I mean, you need a lawyer. To submit a patent for registration, you could do it yourself. But to get a patent registered, most are made by lawyers because it's very specific. Trademarks is sort of in between. It's harder than copyright, but it's easier than patents. Trademarks are tricky in the sense that it looks on the surface to be simple, but when you get into it, it's more complicated than one may think. Trademark have to do with the brand, but it has to do also with some kind of vision that you may have. So it looks in that way a little bit like copyright, but it's not. Maybe the specific design that you have that could be trademarked, or maybe the sound that you have could also be trademarked. But normally, the most common trademark is a name. So Harley-Davidson is trademarked as a brand name. Harley-Davidson is also trademarked as a sound. The sound of an Harley-Davidson is part of the trademark. But the design of a Harley Davidson is also trademark. A specific kind of lowrider type of motorcycle is also trademarked. So it is possible to have all of these, but the most common is the name. Now, how do you go about founding? And so I will sort of go rather quickly on this because they have been discussed today. The first stage is, what do you need money for? How much money do you need? How much money do you have? And the first alternative for funding is to use your own money. Depending on how much you need to go to other sources. In addition, you may have some, and that's great, some immediate or unforeseen success that makes you require more money. And this is when you start bootstrapping, maybe by trying to be more frugal with your money, to have more money accessible. Maybe you're trying to rent versus buy. Maybe you're trying to share things in order to have more efficient personal money. Maybe you try to work with the people that you have to pay in a way that you can bootstrap, where you get extension of payments. You know, as you start, they give you no extension of payments. It's if you buy, you have to pay as you buy, then you get a week, then you get a month, and then you try to ask for longer extensions. And that's part of the personal way of managing your money by bootstrapping. But eventually, you have to go into some equity capital, which means that you have to give a share of your business. And here the idea is, it's okay to give a lot of share if the share that you're giving is going to allow your business to get much bigger, and therefore the equity of your business is going to grow bigger. So the model is angel investors. So we discussed that today with the guest speaker, which are individuals that may be part of an organization. The most famous one in LA is the Maverick Angels, the Pasadena Angels. These are groups that you can find on the internet where people have meetings and anyone can come as a presenter or as an investor, and you hear people making pitch, like you are in the room as a Shark Tank yourself, pitching or giving. And you listen to these people, and then you exchange your card and you try to build this relationship and learn more and so forth. Then, as this may not be enough, then you go into the venture capital, which are those private firms, which are organized usually within a specific industry, health and pharmaceutical, digital and media, the music industry, or the manufacturing, consumer goods, and so forth. And they're specific because they have people that are members that put money inside the VC. And those people put money in the VC, which have a subject that they're very keen on, and eventually they are able, like we heard today, to finance. Then you have debt financing, which means that you go to the bank, and the bank will give you a loan. Then you can go to the government and get a government approved type of loan, which is called SBA loan. And so the governments will essentially work as the warranty for the bank to give you money. So SBA loans are usually working for businesses that have been established. You don't get SBA loans from being a startup, you know, and that's all, the whole point is, if you're a startup, where do you go? And if you're a startup, VC is not going to work. Angel investor is your best bet. But even angel investors are not going to want so much to invest in startups. But they might, because you have this great idea. Maybe it's an idea that it has to do with an app, and people feel that apps works, and they love this concept of apps, and they've done it once or twice or so forth, and they're willing to invest and see how it goes. Okay, so you just try to be creative, and part of this being creative is this last slide I want to talk about for today, which is preparing an elevator pitch. Elevator pitch are funny because you hear about them all the time, but to be honest, they are extremely important. Elevator pitch are, when I went to school, never heard about it. When I went to graduate school, never heard about it. When I went in the industry, I didn't really heard about it. And I heard it when I started my businesses. People ask me, what's your pitch? What's your story? And there are elevator pitch where you have to say something in a few seconds. And so what you have inside an elevator pitch is first talk about the problem that you're solving, the opportunity that's supporting that, and the ID, so that way they can understand. 20 seconds. Describe how your product meet these opportunities, solve these problems. 20 seconds. Describe your qualifications, why I will think that you're capable of doing this. What makes me think that you are better than anyone else to do that? And then describe your market, and then describe what you need from this person. And usually what you need from this person, if you have a 60-second pitch, is another meeting. You need their business cards. You need their cell phone number. You need the email of their secretary. You just want something in exchange. So obviously it's much better if you get their email than the email of their secretary. But an email of the secretary, it's maybe all you can get that day. But this is your foot in the door. So elevator pitch are very important because you do it to investors, but you do it to distributors, you do it to partners, you do it to clients, you do it to event managers, you do it to all these people. So you need to have your 60 seconds. So should you make a 60 seconds for your project? Yes. Should you make a script that is a 60 seconds and put it in the appendix? Put it somewhere. Or create a video that you email us at the end saying, we've created a pitch of 60 seconds, blah, 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 and here it comes. It's one of those deliverables. Yes, you should. Okay. So that concludes today's lecture. This was my last lecture.